Prior to 10th graders listening comprehension in articles. By David Pai. 1. At the barber's shop. Jack went to a barber's shop and had his hair cut, but when he came out, he was not happy with the result. When his friend Bob saw him, he laughed and said, "What has happened to your hair, Jack?" Jack said, "I tried a new barber's shop today, because I wasn't quite satisfied with my old one, but this one seems even worse." Bob agreed. "Yes, I think you're right, Jack. Now I'll tell you what to do when you go into a barber's shop next time. Look at all the barber's hair, find out whose hair looks worst, and then go straight to him." "Why shall I go to him?" Jack asked. "But that would be foolish." "Oh, no, it wouldn't," answered Bob. "Who cut that man's hair? Just think it. He couldn't cut it himself, could he? Another of the barbers cut it. So you know he can't be the worst barber." When Jack went out of the barber's shop, he was not happy because A. Nobody had cut his hair. B. The barber hadn't cut his hair well. C. The barber had cut his hair carefully. D. He was not satisfied with his old barber. 2. I tried a new barber's shop today. Means A. This barber's shop was a new one. B. This was the only barber's shop in this town. C. Jack often went to this barber's shop. D. Jack had not been to this barber's shop before. 3. After Jack had his hair cut, he thought A. The new barber's shop was the best one. B. The old barber's shop wasn't so good as the new one. C. The new barber's shop was worse than the old one. D. The old barber's shop was the worst one. 4. Bob told Jack to find out which barber's hair looked the worst and then go straight to him. Why? A. Because he was certainly the best barber. B. Because he was free all the time. C. Because he was the worst barber. D. Because he wasn't the worst barber. 5. From the story we know that A. It's foolish to have one's hair cut at a barber's shop. B. Barbers cut each other's hair. C. Barbers never have their hair cut. D. A barber always cuts his hair by himself. 2. Mr. Perkins' new car. Mr. Perkins stood at the bus stop and watched the cars go by. Many of the cars were new Beta 400s, and most of them were yellow. Mr. Perkin always wore the same clothes as other men, ate the same food as other people, and did the same things after work, and at the end of the week, Mr. Perkin did not like to be different. The following week, Mr. Perkin bought a new, bright yellow Beta 400s. He was satisfied with it, and drove to work in it the very next day. He was even more satisfied with his new car, when he saw all the other Beta 400s, in front, behind, and on both sides of him. Mr. Perkin parked his car in a big car park, near his office, and walked the rest of the way. But when he came back at 5 o'clock, there were so many bright yellow Beta 400s in the car park that he did not know which car was his. He tried his key in some of the cars, but people passing by gave him a look he didn't like. So he stopped. Poor Mr. Perkin had to wait nearly 2 hours until his was the only yellow Beta 400s in the car park. Mr. Perkin wanted a new yellow Beta 400s because A. The bus did not come. B. He liked new clothes, food, and cars. C. He liked to do the same as other people. D. He liked to be different from others. 2. He drove to work in his new car. A. The very next day. B. The day he bought it. C. A week he bought in. D. On the day he first watched the cars passing. 3. He was satisfied with his new car because A. No one else had a yellow one. B. It was the same as other cars all around him. C. He was in front of all the other cars. D. Other cars were not as bright as his. 4. At 5 o'clock Mr. Perkin A walked home. B drove his car out of the car park. C came back to the car park. D did not know which was his car park. 5 people gave him a look because A. He had a nice new car. B. He could not open the door of his car. C. He was in the wrong car park. D. He was trying to open more than one car. 6. Mr. Perkin had to wait until A. There was only one yellow Beta 400s in the car park. B. There was only one car in the car park. C. There were no bright yellow cars in the car park. D. There was no one about to look at him. 3. Once James Thornhill, a famous English painter, was asked to paint some pictures on the walls of the King's Palace in English. Then workers were sent for and a big platform was made. With the help of a worker, Thornhill started painting on the platform. They worked for a whole year and at last the pictures were ready. Thornhill was happy when he looked at the pictures, for they were really beautiful. He looked at them for a long time, and then took one step back and looked again. Now the pictures were even more beautiful. He took another step, then another. Finally he was at the very edge of the platform, but he did not know it. Because he was thinking of his pictures. The worker saw everything. What should I do? He thought. Thornhill is at the very edge of the platform. If I cry out, he will take another step, fall off it and surely be killed. So the worker quickly took some paint, and threw it at the picture. What are you doing? Cried the painter, running quickly forward to his pictures. 1. What was Thornhill? He was an English A. writer. B. king. C. worker. D. artist. 2. What was he ordered to do? He was ordered to A. paint a picture for the king. B. paint some pictures on the walls of the King's Palace. C. have his pictures painted in the King's Palace. D. have his pictures painted on the walls. 3. The story leads us to believe that A. the worker had to pay for the picture. B. the painter could not forgive the worker. C. the worker was really sorry for what he did. D. the painter thanked the worker for what he did when he got to know why. 4. Your passport, please. Mr. Hill arrives at London Airport, at the end of a 3-week holiday in France. Usually he wears a beard. Since it has been hot there, he has taken it off. But his passport photo shows him with his beard $. An office looks at the photo for a moment, and says, "Will you excuse me? Please sit down. I shan't keep you long." With this, he walks away, shows the photo to a second office, and says, "I know that face." The second officer looks at the passport and asks where Mr. Hill has come from. When he hears that Mr. Hill has arrived back from Paris, the second officer smiled and says, "An Englishman with a beard stole a painting in Paris on Friday, and that man looks just the kind of man." Suddenly it comes to the first officer who Mr. Hill is. He returns to him and asks, "Did you teach at the number 2 high school?" When Mr. Hill answers, in surprise, that he did, the first officer smiles and says, "I thought so. I'm Jack Smith. You taught me French. You haven't changed a bit." 1. Mr. Hill A. has just come back from the airport. B. is on his way to Paris. C. spent 3 weeks in Paris before he went to France. D. has been in France for 3 weeks. 2. Mr. Hill A. has a beard on his face but not in his photo. B. grew a beard while he was on holiday. C. has a beard in his photo but not on his face. D. took his beard off long before he went on holiday. 3. The first officer is sure A. Mr. Hill stole the painting. B. he has seen the face in the photo before. C. He knows the second officer's face. D. A man without a beard stole the painting. 4. The second officer says that A. Mr. Hill stole the painting. B. A man with a beard, from France, stole a painting in English. C. An Englishman took his beard off and stole a painting. D. A man with a beard, from England, stole a painting in Paris. 5. Mr. Hill taught A. Jack Smith French at the No. 2 high school. B. Jack Smith to be a first officer. C. At the No. 2 high school, in France. D. French some years ago and his name was Smith, not Hill. 5. A long time ago people thought that the sun went round the earth. In some countries people even said that the sun was a god. They thought the god drove across the sky each day on a golden horse. Now we know the earth goes round the sun. It takes the earth a year to go all way round the sun. Today, men even know how far it is for the earth to go round the sun. They tell us that the earth travels over 1,000 miles a minute on its journey round the Sunday $. The sun is really a star. It is much bigger than the earth and it is very hot. Some people have been to the moon, but we know that no one can ever go to the sun. It is far too hot for people to live anywhere near it. The sun is 300,000 times heavier than the earth and more than million times larger $. A long time ago, people said the sun was A golden horse of God. B. A god on a golden horse. C. A god with golden dress. D. A god and a golden horse. 2. People can never live anywhere near the sun because it is A. Star, the sun. B. Planet, the moon. C. Planet, itself. D. Planet, the sun. 4. The earth travels over miles an hour. A. 1,000. B. 100,000. C. 6 million. D. 600,000. 5. 1 year is A. The time for the earth to turn round. B. The time the earth travels 1,000 miles. C. 1 circle the earth goes round the sun. D. The journey of the earth. 6. The farmer, his horse, and his son. Once there was an old farmer, with a horse which was almost as old as himself. He set out one morning with his son to sell the horse before it died. Father and son walked, because the farmer did not want the horse to be too tired. They met 2 men on the road who said, "Why are you walking, farmer? You have a horse, it's a long way to market." The farmer knew that this was true. So he rode on the horse, while his son walked. Then they met 2 old women. "What are you doing up there, farmer? Can't you see how tired boy is?" So the farmer got down, and his son rode instead $. Next, 3 old men stopped them. One said, "Why are you walking, farmer? Get up, it's too hot for an old man like you to walk today." So the farmer got up behind his son, and they rode on. Some time later, a young woman passed them. "Why aren't you walking?" she asked. "It isn't far to the market. Give your poor horse a rest." So the farmer, and his son, got down once again. It is a fact that you cannot please all the people all the time. 1. The farmer wanted to sell the horse. A. Before it was dead. B. Before it become too tired. C. Before it market was over. D. Before it was as old as he was. 2. The 2 men on the road. A. Asked how far it was to the market. B. Said they thought the horse looked very tired. C. Asked why the farmer was not riding on his horse. D. Told the farmer's son to get off the horse and walk. 3. The 2 old women said it was wrong for A. The farmer to ride such a tired horse. B. The farmer to ride while his young son walked. C. The boy to ride instead of his father. D. Only one person to ride such a long way. 4. The farmer got up behind his son because A. The old man said it was too hot for him to walk. B. The 3 old men stopped them on the road. C. He did not know why he was walking. D. His son could not ride the horse by himself. 5. The young woman was most sorry. A. For the old man. B. For the farmer's young son. C. That it was not far to the market. D. For the horse. 7. I want to be a dustman. Tom was 10 years old, and he was a very lazy boy. He didn't like doing any work. He had to go to school, of course, but he didn't study hard there and tried to do as little work as possible. His father and mother were both doctors and they hoped that their son would become one, too, when he grew up. But one day Tom said to his mother, "When I finish school, I want to be a dustman." A dustman? His mother asked. She was very surprised. "That's not a very pleasant job. Why do you want to become a dustman?" "Because then I would only have to work 1 day a week." Tom answered at once. "Only 1 day a week?" His mother said, "What do you mean? And how do you know?" "Well," Tom replied, "I know that the dustmen who come to our house on work on Thursday, because I only see them on that day." 1. What kind of boy was Tom? A. Tom was a clever boy. B. Tom was a boy who didn't like to work. C. Tom was a boy who worked very hard. 2. What were his father and mother? A. His father was a doctor and his mother was a nurse. B. His father was a worker, his mother was a doctor. C. His father was a doctor, so his mother. 3. What did his parents want him to be when he grew up? A. They wanted him to be a dustman. B. They wanted him to be an officer. C. They wanted him to be a doctor. 4. What did Tom say he wanted to be? A. Tom said that he wanted to be a person who collected rubbish and emptied the dust bins. B. Tom said that he wanted to be a person who taught the children at school. C. Tom said that he wanted to be a person who worked in a hospital. 5. Why did Tom think that dustmen only worked 1 day a week? A. Because Tom heard of this. B. Because one of the dustmen had told him before. C. Because Tom had seen the dustman only on Thursday at his house. 8. Can animal be made to work for us? Can animals be made to work for us? Some scientists think that one day animals may be taught to do a number of simple jobs. They say that in a film or on TV, we may see elephants, or monkeys, dogs, bear, or other animals doing a lot of things. If you watch carefully, you may find that those animals are always given something to eat in return for doing them. The scientists say that many different animals may be taught to do a number of simple jobs if they know they will get something to eat in return. Of course, as we know, dogs can be used to guard a house, an elephant can be used to do some heavy jobs. And we can also teach animal to work in factories. Apes, for example, have been used in America to help make cars, and scientists believe that these large monkeys may one day get in crops and even drive trains. One elephant can be used to do some heavy jobs because A. They can eat a lot. B. They are very heavy, too. C. They are very strong. 2 dogs can be used to guard a house for his host because A. They are good at running. B. They are very kind and friendly to people. C. They are brave enough to get the stranger and thieves away from the house. 3. Many different animals may be taught to do some simple jobs if A. They have enough food to eat. B. They learn they will get something to eat in return after doing them. C. If they are sent to school. 4. Can be trained to work for us. A. Only a few animals. B. Quite a few animals. C. Few animal. 5. Many scientists are working hard to A. Make monkeys get in crops and drive trains. B. Make monkeys guard house like dogs. C. Make bears get in crops. 9. A girl or a boy, a woman or a man. A lot of boys and girls in America are wearing the same clothes and many of them have long hair. So it is often difficult to tell whether they are boys or girls. One day an old man went for a walk in a park in Washington, and he was tired. He sat down on a bench. A young person was standing on the other side of the pond. "Excuse me," the old man said to the person next to him on the bench, "do you see the person with the red trousers and long hair? Is it a boy or a girl?" "A girl," said his neighbor. "She is my daughter." "Oh," the old said quickly, "I am sorry, but I didn't know that you were her mother." "I'm not," said the other person. "I'm her father." It isn't often easy to tell whether many of American children are boys or girl. A, because they all look like each other. B, because they are wearing the same kinds of caps and shoes. C, because they have long hair and wear the same clothes. 2. One day an old man went for a walk in A, the street in Washington. B, the Washington Park in America. C, in a park in Washington. 3. There were persons beside the pond. They are A3, a man, a woman, and a girl. B3, 2 men and a girl. C2, a man and a girl. 4. The young person standing on the other side of the was A, bench, the other's boy. B, pond, the old man's daughter. C, pond, the daughter of the old man's neighbor. 5. The young person wore A pair of red trousers. B, on a pair of red trousers. C, with a pair of red trousers. 6. The old man thought his neighbor was the girl's A, mother. B, father. C, brother. 10. Mr. Robinson worked in Africa. His son was born there. His name was John. One winter Mr. and Mrs. Robinson went England, and they took John there. John was 7 years old then. One day it snowed. The boy went into the garden, and he played in the snow. He said, "Snow is very beautiful, but it is very cold." Then he said, "What is this?" "It is a big, round piece of glass. It is beautiful, but it is very cold, too." But it was not glass. It was ice. It was on a bucket of water. John said, "Who put this glass here? I am going to take it into the house." He took the ice to his father and said, "This is a beautiful piece of glass, but it is very cold and wet." It was on a bucket of water in the garden. Mr. Robinson smiled and said, "Take it to the kitchen, put it in front of the stove, there, and dry it." The boy took the ice to the kitchen and put it in front of the stove. He dried his hands, because they were very cold and wet, and then he went to the ice again. He looked at it, and then he took it to his father again. He said, "I put this glass in front of the stove, but it does not get drier. It becomes wetter and smaller." John didn't know what the ice was, because A, he was very foolish. B, he was young. C, he was born in Africa. D, he didn't go to school. 2. One winter Mr. and Mrs. Robinson went England with A, their son. B, a boy of their friends. C, their daughter. D, one of their friends' son. 3. One day John found on a bucket of water A piece of glass. B, a piece of ice. C, some snow. D, some water. 4. What did Mr. Robinson ask John to do? A, he asked John to take the ice out. B, he asked John to put the ice in front of the stove. C, he asked John not to play with ice. D, he asked John to dry his hands at once. 5. After John put the ice in front of the stove, he found that it became A, dry. B, wetter. C, bigger. D, colder. 11. Once there was a man who had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy was good looking, but the girl was not. One day they found a mirror, for the first time, and they saw what they looked like. The boy was very pleased, and he said to his sister, "How handsome I am! I look much nicer than you." The girl did not like what her brother said and gave him a hard push. "Go away," she said. Their father saw what was happening. He went up to them and said to the boy, "You must always be good as well as look good." Then to the girl he said, "My dear, if you help everyone and do your best to please him, everyone will love you. It does not matter that you are not as good looking as your brother." Once a man had a good looking boy, b an ugly girl, c 2 good looking children, d a boy and a girl. 2 The boy saw what he looked like in the mirror and was pleased because he a found a mirror, b knew he looked as nice as his sister, c and his sister were good looking, d was handsome. 3 The girl gave the boy a hard push because a she was stronger, b what he said was wrong, c she was not pleased with what he said, d her father loved her. 4 Father told the girl that a it was important to be good looking, b it was a good thing to be ugly, c if she did her best to help people, she would enjoy people's love, d she was as good looking as her brother. 5 What can we learn from this story? A. To be good to people is more important than to be good looking. B. To be good looking is very important. C. If you want to make yourself good looking, you must be good to people. D. If you often help people, you will become more and more beautiful. 12. Learning English. Many students in China are learning English. Some of these students are small children. Others are teenagers. Many are adults. Some learn at school, others study by themselves. A few learn English language over the radio, on television, or in films. One must work hard to learn another language. Why do all these people want to learn English? It is difficult to answer that question. Many boys and girls learn English at school because it is one of their subjects. They study their own language and maths in English. Some people learn English because it is useful for their work. Many people often learn English for their higher studies, because at college or university, some of their books are in English. Other people learn English because they want to read newspaper and magazines in English. Many students in China are learning English, aren't they? A. No, they aren't. B. No, they are. C. Yes, they are. D. Yes, they aren't. 2. If one wants to learn another language well, he must A. Learn at school. B. Study by himself. C. Work hard. D. Study hard. 3. The sentence "it is difficult to answer that question" means A. That question is not difficult to answer. B. That question is difficult to answer it. C. It is difficultly to answer that question. D. It is hard to answer that question. 4. Their own language means A. Chinese. B. English. C. French. D. Japanese. 5. What's the Chinese of study by themselves? A. B. C. D. 13. Man's best friend. Almost everyone likes dogs, and almost everyone likes reading stories about dogs. I have a friend. The friend has a large police dog. Its name is Jack. Police dogs are often very clever. Every Sunday afternoon my friend takes Jack for a long walk in the park. Jack likes these long walks very much. One Sunday afternoon a young man came to visit my friend. He stayed a long time. He talked and talked. Soon it was time for my friend to take Jack for his walk. But the visitor still stayed. Jack became very worried. He walked around the room several times and then sat down in front of the visitor and looked at him. But the visitor paid no attention. He continued talking. Finally Jack couldn't stand it. He went out of the room and came back. A few minutes later, he sat down again in front of the visitor, but this time he held the visitor's hat in his mouth and ran out of the room. 1. Jack is the name of A. A young man. B. A policeman. C. A police dog. D. A good friend. 2. In this story the word visitor means A. The young man. B. The writer of this story. C. The police dog. D. The friend. 3. The visitor paid no attention to the dog because A. He didn't see the dog. B. He didn't like the dog. C. He was afraid of the dog. D. He didn't understand what the dog meant. 4. The dog held the visitor's hat in his mouth to show that A. He liked the hat very much. B. He wanted the visitor to leave immediately. C. He wanted to throw the hat away. D. He wanted to put on the hat. 14. A friend of mine was fond of drawing horse. He drew the horses very well, but he always began the tail. Now it is the Western rule to begin at the head of the horse, that is why I was surprised. It struck me that it could not really make any difference whether the artist begins at the head or the tail or the belly, or the foot of the horse, if he really knows his business. And most great artists who really know their business do not follow other people's rule. They make their own rules. Every one of them does his work in a way peculiar to himself, and the peculiarity means only that he finds it more easy to work in that way. Now the very same thing is true to literature. And the question, how shall I begin? Only means that you want to begin at the head instead of beginning at the tail or somewhere else. That is, you are not yet experienced enough to trust to your own powers. When you become more experienced you will never ask the question, and I think that you will often begin at the tail. That is to say, you will write the end of the story before you have even thought of the beginning. 1. A friend of the writers drew the horses. A. Very well. B. In the way of Western rule. C. In the way of his own rule. D. All of the above. 2. The writer was surprised because A. The artist began to draw at the head of the horse. B. The artist began to draw at the tail of the horse. C. The artist made his own rule. D. The artist did not follow other people's rule. 3. You are not yet experienced because A. You don't know where to begin. B. You want to begin at the head instead of beginning at the tail. C. You always asked question. D. You do not trust to your own powers. 4. When you become more experienced you will A. Never ask question. B. Often begin at the tail. C. Should write the end of the story. D. Should think of the beginning. 5. The topic of the passage is A. How to draw a horse. B. How to write a story. C. How to make your own rules. D. Trust to your own powers. 15. The seats are too small. Paul got on the bus to go to the town. It was very crowded, and he had to stand for about 5 minutes. Then some of the passengers got off. Paul sat down next to a fat lady. She had several shopping bags, and Paul didn't have much room on the seat. At last the bus got to the town. All the passengers started to get off. Paul was very polite, so he stood up to let the fat lady get off before him. She said, "Thank you." Then she tried to get out of the seat with all her bags. But she couldn't move. She was stuck. Paul had to push the lady. The conductor pulled her Finally they got her free, but she wasn't pleased. "I'll write to the bus company," she said. "I'll tell them not to make buses with such small seats." 1. Why couldn't the lady get out of the seat? A. Because the seat on the bus were too small. B. Because the lady was too fat and had a lot of bags. C. Because the bus was very crowded. D. Because Paul was in his seat next to hers. 2. When did Paul get a seat on the bus? A. As soon as he got on the bus. B. After 5 minutes. C. Just before he wanted to get off. D. Just before the bus got to the town. 3. How do you know that Paul was very polite? A. He didn't take the seat and was always standing. B. He pushed the lady out of her seat. C. He stood up to let the lady get off before him. D. He helped the lady carry her bags. 4. And Paul didn't have much room on the seat. The word room here means A. Part of a house. B. Space. C. Part of a seat. D. Something for sitting on. 5. She was stuck. In th story it means she A. wasn't able to move or to get out. B. was sitting there, she couldn't stand up. C. pushed her bags. D. moved very slowly. 16. Have to pay. A boy who was cleaning shoes in the street said to a young man passing by, "Let me clean your shoes." The young man said, "No, thank you. You may pay me only £1, sir," said the boy. But the young man refused again. Then the boy told him that he would clean his shoes for nothing. The young man agreed to this, and soon one of his shoes was shining brightly. The man put the other shoe on the boy, but the boy refused to clean it unless he was paid £2 for his work. The young man refused to pay anything and went away. But the dirty one looked so bad that he couldn't walk away. He had to turn back and gave the boy £2. In a very short time his shoes shone brightly. 1. The boy was a shoes. A. Cleaner. B. Maker. C. Repairer. D. Seller. 2. At first the young man refused to clean his shoes, because A. He couldn't pay. B. He had not enough money. C. He didn't think it necessary. D. He had just cleaned his shoes. 3. Then the young man agreed to clean his shoes, because the boy asked for A. £2, B. £1, C. nothing, D. few money. 4. The boy refused to clean the second shoe, because A. It was very dirty. B. The young man paid only £1. C. It was difficult to clean. D. He asked to be paid £2. 5. The boy said he would clean the young man's shoes for nothing just in order to A. show his kindness. B. help the young man. C. get more money from him. D. let everyone see. 17. A sentence with 5 end. Can you think of a sentence that the word end appears 5 times, without any words in between? There is one at the end of this story. There was once an inn which was called the Horse and Cart. It had a sign outside it, and there was a picture of a horse and a cart on it. But the sign was getting old, so the owner of the inn decided to have a new one made. He went to a painter and asked him to paint one and to write the horse and cart on it in large letters. A few days later, he went to see how the painter was getting on. He liked the picture of the horse and cart very much, but he did not like the writing at all. He said to the painter, "No, no. There's too much room between horse and cart. 1. An inn is A. A small house. B. a small horse. C. a small hotel or place where one can stay. D. a kind of colored liquid that can be used for writing. 2. There was a outside the inn. A. blackboard. B. cart. C. painter. D. sign. 3. The owner of the inn decided to A. sell his inn. B. buy a new sign. C. To paint his inn. D. Call a painter to paint a new sign. 4. The owner of the inn thought. A. The letters on the sign were too large. B. The letters on the sign were poorly written. C. There were less space between the letters on the sign. D. The letters on the sign were separated too widely. 5. The owner liked but not. A. The painter, the letters. B. The horse, the letters. C. The picture, the writing. D. The sign, the writing. 18. Seeing the horse eat fish. Once an old man was walking in a street with his horse. It was raining hard. The old man was cold because he was walking in the rain. He wanted to stay in a restaurant. It was 3:15 in the afternoon. The old man got to a small restaurant. There were a lot of people in it. The old man couldn't come near the fire. He thought and thought. At last he said to the waiters, "Take some fish to my horse." The waiter and the people were very surprised. The waiter said, "A horse doesn't eat fish." The old man told the waiter, "This horse is very interesting. It can sing, dance and does all kinds of things. It can eat fish, too," so the waiter brought the horse some fish. All the people in the restaurant ran out to see the horse eat fish except the old man. Now the old man sat beside the fire. After a while the waiter came back and said, "Your horse didn't eat any fish." The old man said, "All right, take the fish back and put it on the table. I'll eat it." Note: stove waiter. 1. The old man felt very cold because A. It was a cloudy and windy day. B. It snowed. C. He had traveled in the heavy rain. D. He was hungry. 2. The people in the restaurant all ran out because A. They wanted to see the old man. B. They wanted to see the horse eating fish. C. They had been told there came the horse. D. There was no fire over the stove. 3. Indeed, the horse can neither nor. A. Walk, speak, eat. B. Sing, dance, sleep. C. Sing, dance, eat fish. D. Speak, walk, sit. 4. All the people in the restaurant rushed out but A. To see the horse sing, the old man. B. To watch the horse play games, the waiter. C. To look for the horse, the old man. D. To see the horse eat fish, the old man. 5. Why did the old man ask the waiter to take some fish to his horse? Because A. His horse liked eating fish. B. He was cold. C. He wanted to sit by the fire, but wasn't able to do so at first. D. He himself also liked to eat fish. 19. A man and his daughter. One day a man and his daughter were going out for a walk. The man had put on a pair of odd shoes, one with a thick sole and one with a thin sole. As he came out to the street, he felt very uncomfortable. Turning to his daughter, he said, "Why should one of my legs be longer than the other day?" The daughter looked at her father's legs and said, "You have put on 2 odd shoes." When he heard this, the man was very happy and thought to himself, "What a bright daughter I've got." Then he asked his daughter to go back to the house and got him another pair of shoes. When the daughter went back to the house, all she could find was one shoes with thick sole and one with thin sole. Taking the shoes to show her father, she said, "It's no use changing. These shoes are also odd, one with a thick sole and one with a thin sole." The man listened and thought to himself, "It can't be helped. I might as well wear the ones I have on now." So they went for their walk. Notes: sole odd, /. 1. The man thought that his daughter was A. Beautiful. B. Clever. C. Lazy. D. Clean. 2. It was the that found the reason for it. A. Father. B. Daughter. C. Neighbor. D. Passerby. 3. The daughter came back, bringing with her A. A pair of shoes. B. A pair of odd shoes. C. A pair of thick-soled shoes. D. Nothing. 4. What do you think that the man should have done? A. He should return to his home and got the shoes himself. B. He should have the thick sole cut off. C. He should have changed one of his shoes. D. He should have no shoes on. 5. What do you think of the man and his daughter? A. They both were not clever. B. The father was cleverer than the daughter. C. The daughter was cleverer than the father. D. Either of them was foolish enough. 20. Communication. You speak, write a letter, make a telephone call. Your words carry a message. People communicate with words. Do you think you can communicate without words? A smile on your face shows you are happy or friendly. Tears in your eyes tell others that you are sad. When you raise your hand in class, the teacher knows you want to say something or ask questions. You shake your head, and people know you are saying no. You nod and people know you are saying yes. Other things can also carry messages. For example, a sign at the bus stop helps you to know which bus to take. A sign on the wall of your school helps you to find the library. Signs on doors tell you where to go in or out. Have you ever noticed that there are a lot of signs around you and that you receive messages from them all the time? People can communicate in many other ways. An artist can use his drawings to tell about beautiful mountains, about the blue sea and many other things. Books are written to tell you about all the wonderful things in the world and also about people and their ideas. Books, magazines, TV, and radios and films all help us to communicate with each other. They all help us to know what is going on in the world and what other people are thinking about. Notes, communicate sign, comma. 1. Can we communicate with each other without words? A. Yes, sometimes we can. B. No, we can't. C. No, it's impossible. D. Yes, we always do so. 2. When we see somebody smile, then, he must be feeling A. Angry. B. Joyful. C. Surprised. D. Sad. 3. We can learn news from A. Newspapers. B. Radio. C. TV. D. ABC. 4. A sign at the bus stop tells you A. How many buses there are. B. What kind of bus it is. C. Where the bus comes and goes. D. How much money you'll pay for the ticket. 5. What do you think is the quickest way to communicate with your friend in another city? A. Writing a letter. B. Making a telephone. C. Drawing a picture. D. Asking someone else to take a message. 21. Weather and men. Everybody talks about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. It is true. People usually begin their talks with "Isn't it a nice day? Do you think it will rain? What a fine day?" etc. Many people think they can tell what the weather is going to be like. But they hardly agree with each other. One man may say, "Do you see how cloudy it is in the east? It's going to rain tomorrow." Another man will say, "No, it's going to be fine tomorrow." People often look for the weather they want. When a farmer needs water, he looks for something to tell him it's going to rain. He won't believe anything else. When friends have a travel, they are sure the weather is going to clear up very quickly. Almost everyone listens to what the weatherman says. But he doesn't always tell us what we want, and once in a while he makes a mistake. Still, he probably comes closer to being correct than anyone else. 1. Nobody does something about the weather means A. Nobody can make weather. B. Nobody can change weather. C. Nobody can talk about weather. D. Nobody likes weather. 2 is a common way to start a talk. A. Talking about weather. B. Keeping silent. C. Asking each other's names. D. Smile. 3. Many people hope the weather will be A. Fine. B. Rainy. C. Cloudy. D. Like what they like to be. 4. A weatherman probably is a man who A. Reports weather. B. Can see weather. C. Can change weather. D. Is made of weather. 5. When it is cloudy in the east, you know that tomorrow A. It is going to rain. B. It will be fine. C. It will be still cloudy. D. A. Or B or C. 22. Languages. There are more than 3,000 million people on the earth and about 2,500 languages. Of these languages, only about 12 are used by more than 50 million people. Here are the names of some languages which have very wide use: Chinese, English, French, German, Japanese, etc. All these languages have more people talking them today than ever before. 150 years ago there were only about 20 million people who talked English, for example. Now there are at least 250 million, and there may be many, many more. 1. There are about languages in the world. A. 3,000. B. 2,500. C. 5. D. 50 million. 2. Which languages are widely used in the world? A. English and Chinese. B. German and Japanese. C. French. D. ABC. 3. 150 years ago, only about people spoke English. A. 20,000. B. 200,000. C. 2 million. D. 20 million. 4. Which of the following languages has most speakers, do you think? A. English. B. French. C. Chinese. D. Japanese. 5. We know that now there are people speaking English than before. A. Fewer. B. Much less. C. Much more. D. Many more. 23. A selfish man. Smith was a landlord. He loved money very much and never gave anything to anybody. Soon he became rich. One day the weather was fine. There wasn't a cloud in the sky and the sun was very warm. The landlord was walking along a river with his friends, when, all of a sudden, he slipped and fell into it. He cried, "Help! Help!" One of his friends held out his hand and said, "Give me your hand and I will pull you out." The landlord's head went under the water and then came up again, but he did not give his hand to his friends. Then another of his friends tried, but the same thing happened. Just then a farmer came over and saw all this. He knew the landlord very well. He said to the others, "Let me try." He held out his hand and said to the landlord, "Take my hand and I will pull you out." Hearing this, the landlord took the farmer's hand, and in a minute the farmer pulled the landlord out of the water. All the others got very surprised at this and asked the farmer, "Why did he give his hand to you but not to us?" The farmer said, "You don't know your friend very well. When you say give to him, he does nothing, but when you say take, he takes." Notes: selfish, landlord. 1. Smith was A. doctor. B. farmer. C. landlord. D. waiter. 2. Smith became very rich, because he gave anything to anybody. A. always. B. never. C. often. D. sometimes. 3. One day Smith was walking along A. with his friends. A. river. B. park. C. street. D. lake. 4. The rich man held his hand when he heard "Take my hand." A. in. B. into. C. down. D. out. 5. Who knew the rich man very well? A. His friends. B. His wife. C. The farmer. D. His children. 24. The lost ring. One day a man went home to his wife and said, "I have bought something for you." "Oh, thank you," said his wife. "What have you bought?" "I've bought a gold ring. Here it is." He held it out for his wife to see. Then he dropped it. "Oh dear," he said. "I have dropped it." He began to look for it on the floor, but it was dark inside the house and he could not see anything. He went outside the house and began to look for the ring in the street. Just then a friend came along. "What's the matter?" he asked. "I have lost a ring," said the man. "Where did you lose it?" "I lost it inside my house." "You lost your ring inside your house, but you are looking for it outside in the street. That seems very foolish." "Ah," said the man, "but it is dark inside my house. I shall never find it there. But here in the street there is more light and I can see more clearly." Notes: ring gold, comma. One day a man went to the street to buy a gold. A. Watch. B. Clock. C. Ring. D. Earring. 2. He dropped the ring the house. A. Inside. B. Outside. C. In front of. D. Beside. 3. At first he looked for the ring in the A. Street. B. Shop. C. Road. D. House. 4. Next he looked for the ring in the A. Room. B. Garden. C. House. D. Street. 5. Do you think that the man was? Yes, I do. A. Clever. B. Foolish. C. Bright. D. Wise. 25. Memory. A good memory is a great help in learning a language. Everybody learns his own language by remembering what he hears when he is a small child, and some children, like boys and girls who live abroad with their parents, seem to learn 2 languages almost as easily as one. In school it is not easy to learn a second language because the pupils have so little time for it, and they are busy with other subjects, too. A man's mind is rather like a camera, but it takes photos not only of what we see but of what we feel, hear, smell and taste. When we take a real photo with a camera, there is much to do before the photo is finished and ready to show to our friends. In the same way, there is much work to be done before we can keep a picture forever in our mind. Memory is the diary that we all carry about with us. 1. We usually begin to learn a language by it first. A. Speaking. B. Seeing. C. Hearing. D. Feeling. 2. If you have a good, you'll have less difficulty in learning something. A. Photo. B. Picture. C. Memory. D. Camera. 3. The children who live abroad with their parents can learn 2 languages more easily, because A. They are very clever. B. They have good teachers. C. They have more chances to use these languages. D. They have a better life. 4. We know that one's mind a camera. A. Likes. B. Is liked. C. Will like. D. Is like. 5. A camera takes photos of what can be A. Seen. B. Felt. C. Heard. D. Smelt. 26. Oil. Almost everyone in the world uses oil in some way. Cars, buses, planes, and many trains and ships also need oil. Even our bicycles need oil. Indeed, the whole world would stop if there was no oil. Today there is a growing need for oil in the world. So people are looking for it everywhere. They look for oil in deserts, in the mountains and under the sea. Quite often they find nothing, but the search for oil always goes on. What are the largest oil producers in the world? the US, the USSR, and countries of the Middle East. But China is catching up fast. Before liberation we used to buy nearly all our oil from the US. Many foreign people said China was oil poor. But since liberation oil has been found in many parts of the country. Today everyone agrees that China is rich in oil. Our oil will not only meet the great need in our country, but also be sold to other countries. Notes: producer used to u.s.s.r. 1 weekend without any oil. A. Run a bus or a ship. B. Run planes or trains. C. Run no machines. D. Ride a bike. 2. A growing need for oil probably means A. Oil is growing more and more. B. Today people need more oil than before. C. People need less oil now. D. Oil is needed to grow. 3. Oil can be found A. Under the ground. B. Under the sea. C. Under the deserts. D. A. B. C. 4. Was once said to be poor in oil. A. US. B. U.S.S.R. C. China. D. The Middle East. 5. People search for oil everywhere. A. An oil can be found easily. B. But oil is very difficult to find. C. But can find nothing. D. An oil is growing more and more. 27. A. Golden watch. Mr. Mike was a young man. He was not very rich. One day he went into a watch shop to buy a nice-looking watch for his girlfriend, Rose. He fixed his eyes on a nice golden watch, and decided to buy it. The shop assistant took the watch out, and asked for £300 for it. Just then, a boy of about 15 suddenly rushed over and grasped the watch from the assistant's hand. The assistant hurried out to catch the boy. But it was too late, the boy had disappeared among the street people very quickly. On the way home, Mike met the boy, who would sell him the gold watch for only £100. The boy didn't know that I saw him stealing the watch from the shop. And he asked for much less money than that in the shop. Mike thought to himself. So he paid the boy and took the watch home. The next day, Mike gave the golden watch to Rose, and told her all about the watch. Rose looked at the watch for a while, then laughed loudly. "You are really a fool," she said. "This watch isn't worth £100 at all." The assistant and the boy must have planned the whole thing together. 1. The shop assistant said the price of the watch was A. £100. B. £200. C. £300. D. less than £100. 2. The shop assistant must have known very well A. Mike. B. the boy. C. Rose. D. nobody. 3. The boy would sell Mike the watch for A. £200. B. £300. C. as much money as that in the shop. D. much less money than that in the shop. 4. In fact, the watch was worth A. £100. B. £300. C. just a little money. D. much more money. 5. In this story, who really lost something? A. the shop assistant. B. Mike. C. the boy. D. Rose. High frequent JCEE close phrases. By David Pai.